In this week's episode, I was joined by Toni Cocozza. Toni was the founder of DP Connect, a technology recruitment business that started in 1990 after she'd spent 8 years as a recruiter and had a really tough, she was treated really badly during pregnancy. She then decided to start her own recruitment business from a box room whilst pregnant with her first child, and then led that business for 27 years till she sold it through a management buyout in 2017. She reached a 30 million turnover in her peak, and honestly, one of my favorite ever episodes I've recorded. She was remarkably honest about the good times and the bad times, and how the things she did well and the things that really, really hit her hard. And I absolutely loved the episode. I saw so much of myself, if I'm honest, and the things that I've already been through in the short time I've been a business owner in Toni, and I can see why her role now is she's got her own business now where she supports recruitment owners and people in the industry with not only their mental health but their personal lives, and how do they balance the two. So we go right back to the start and share lots and lots of her journey. I hope you really, really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, Toni Cocozza, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
You've just arrived. You arrived just a little bit late, but there's no problem with that. Don't worry too much. I did find Toni about 150 yards away from the office, having been in a cab that nearly crashed, and you were a little bit flustered when I met you.
Yeah, definitely. Modern technology.
Well, that's it. We had this
Google Maps.
We had a much bigger problem in the last office. Now we're in one right near the tube. It's definitely easier to find.
Yeah.
But you got here in the end.
I got a taxi, that's why.
You got a cab. You got an old school black cab.
Yeah, shouldn't have been lazy.
Do you think black cabs know what they're doing?
The old guy that just took me had no idea what he was doing, and he actually shouldn't be on the road, but that's another story.
Well, look, Toni, it's lovely to have you in. We spoke. You were another person who was tagged in that post. So I did a post about
Anthony Webster.
Anthony Webster, yeah. So Anthony, if you're listening, which I'll make sure you're listening, he used to talk about you loads. We used to sit together in our last business for 4 years. He was like my best mate, and he was my right-hand man at work. I was contract, he was perm. And he spoke about you loads. I never put two and two together, but then when you were tagged in the post, I was like, I did recognise it. But obviously, you've got a pretty big name in the market, and not a lot of people know who you are. We met recently at one of the events that we were both at. Yep. So I'm excited to hear more about your story and hopefully share some real value for the audience. So could you kick us off with just giving us an overview of who you are today and what you're up to?
Who am I? So I'm Toni Cocozza. I set up DP Connect, an IT recruitment business, in 1990 after the birth of my first child. And I ran that business very successfully some of the time, and very unsuccessfully other times.
Well, that's anything.
And led it to a management buyout in 2017 now, so 2 years ago. And since then, I'm working with businesses in the industry, helping them understand their vision, turning that into a strategy, and sort of helping them execute it.
Right.
Plus, I'm doing some doing some executive coaching for people outside of the industry.
Really?
So
senior people in other industries?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's loads that I can already think about we're going to talk about.
Okay.
But in true fashion of this podcast, I always like to go back to the start. So let's go. Firstly, how did you get into recruitment in general?
How did I get into recruitment? So when I left school, and I left school at 16 with no qualifications, and my first job was pouring tea on a holiday camp on the Isle of Sheppey.
Really?
I didn't want to do that. It's in the middle of nowhere near Maidstone, down south somewhere. So that was my first job. I didn't get any qualifications. I'm quite seriously dyslexic. Okay. So I left school as soon as I could and thought I'd go into the world of work. And the first job was run away from it all. I'd applied to loads of jobs in the Lady because I wanted to go and work abroad and everything. And the best I got was the Isle of Sheppey serving tea. And when I came back from there, I was really sort of unsure of what I was going to do and just applied for jobs anywhere and had a few sort of random jobs. I worked for British Rail in their print department.
Oh, wow.
I worked for a company called Same Day Delivery Services. That was a courier firm. And then I finally came across a job as an interviewer. So at the time it was not a consultant, you're an interviewer.
Really? That's
for
what you're known as?
an employment agency called Economic Employment.
Oh, wow.
That's right. And they had a branch in Crystal Palace and a branch in Streatham.
Right.
So I worked
I've got a
there.
flat in Crystal Palace.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Well, they were on that
Beulah
main
Hill.
high
Do you know
road.
Beulah Hill?
Yeah, they were where Joanna's is, opposite Joanna's.
I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time in Joanna's.
Yeah, so I worked there. So that was my first intro to recruitment, which I hated.
What was the triangle in Palace like then?
Oh, was that the actual place?
Well, just the triangle itself in Crystal
Yeah,
Palace. Was there
well,
much
it was
on
mainly no, it was mainly just the one road,
Was there
mainly
not-
just the
not
one
a lot
road. But
there?
no, not really. Joanna's
It's great now.
Christmas
Joanna's was
party,
still there.
yeah, it was still there.
Really?
It's been going all those years. That
So
would have been
cool, that place. Sorry, we're really going off topic now. But-
Anyway, so I worked in recruitment then, and I was placing general people everywhere, from garage attendants to secretaries, and I hated the industry. I hated that you'd make a placement, you get so excited, and then all of a sudden one of them would come in and give you the keys back for the office and say, I'm not going to work there anymore.
Oh, no.
And so, it was credit notes everywhere. So I decided that wasn't the line for me, and I went into selling advertising space.
Okay.
So I worked for Custom Car Magazine, Hot Rod and Customs, Superbike Magazine. I was one of their first female salespeople, and I loved it. I'm not very interested in cars or anything like that, but I liked the chase and I liked selling.
Yeah.
And somebody that I'd worked with in recruitment previously headhunted me and asked me to go and talk to them. They were working in recruitment again,
Right.
but they said it was very different. It's technology,
yeah.
It's very professional nowadays, it's a very different environment, and that's where my journey began.
Right. And you said you did about, was it 8 years in agency?
I did 8 years working for a company, and that was good. I was very young at the time, very ambitious and hungry for success, and I achieved it up until a certain point.
Were you mainly a biller, or were you
I was a
management?
biller, then I went into management,
Yeah.
and then I was sales director.
Right.
But the problem we had there was, as a recessions hit, the way they treated their staff was diabolical. There was a lot of people who were concerned around a recession,
Yeah.
and the employers of the company at the time, I felt, just worried about themselves and nobody else.
So when was this? The late 80s? Was
That
it?
would be about, that'd be 89,
Okay.
88, 89. And during that period, I didn't like the way they treated the staff. A recession started to hit, and I was pregnant, and I decided that the way they were treating me, I had an awful situation whereby when I told them I was pregnant, I thought I timed it right. I waited for another director to have her baby. And then me and my husband decided to have a child. And I had my clients taken off of me. I wasn't invited to meetings, and I could just see, the writing on the wall, and, warning to anybody.
Was it a shock based on the fact you've been there so long?
Yeah, it was. And I think what was a shock as well is it was my first baby, and when a woman is carrying her child, don't cross her, that's all I can say, There was this whole situation about me feeling insecure anyway, and I had this child to worry about now, and now my job was being taken away from me, and I had no control because I knew I was going to go off and have a child. And, I'm quite passionate now about people employing women and how they treat them when they're going through pregnancy and afterwards, because to the people that didn't look after me then, I did quite successfully afterwards, and they missed out because I had to leave, And I think that it's only the most 6 months people take off to have their child, really. How long does it take to recruit another good recruiter?
Oh, a long time.
So
Especially
I think there's
in
a
that
lot
sort
to
of
be.
leadership role as well.
So I think a lot went wrong there that's made me think about the future. It made me
So you
think,
had
where
the
did I want to
child,
go?
And then over that maternity period, was that what you thought about?
No, I didn't actually have any maternity. So I actually set the business up when I was still pregnant.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And when she was born, unfortunately, it sounds awful now and I feel really bad about it, but I only had a couple of weeks off.
What did your
because I had a
husband
business
think
on
when
my
you were
own.
starting a business when you were pregnant?
Yeah, well, I think the problem was that I'd done well in the company I was at, and so when it came to having a baby, we financially had prepared for it, and I thought my job would be safe, and then it wasn't safe, so it was, paying the mortgage, needs must, and all that. But I did promise
really
myself
hard,
on my
though.
second child that I would take more time out, and unfortunately, I went into labour nearly 8 weeks early, so I didn't quite get that time. Anyway. Yeah, so had my baby and started up my business very much at the same time.
Did you have support from family to look after the child?
Yeah, so my kids were looked after by nanny and granddad, so
Yeah.
I was very lucky with that throughout my career. And I set up DP Connect, and I thought I was setting
where
up
did the
DP
name
Connect
come from?
because it was data processing. That's how old I am.
Really?
IT wasn't there then, it was data processing. I thought at the time, right, this is great now, this is going to work, I'm going to set up this business, it doesn't need to be very big, it just needs to help pay the mortgage, and I'm going to have this baby and maybe I'll work part-time. And I hate to say it, but in the 27 years, I never worked part-time. But I encouraged part-time working for everybody else, and found that I kept some brilliant people because of it.
So tell me, what was the first year? Let's go back that first
year. I mean, we are talking a lot of years here. Were you born?
But just
were you born?
Was
then?
I born? Yeah, in 1986 I was born.
Okay.
So I was
right.
I was a toddler.
You were 4.
I was a toddler, but I was alive. I didn't have grey hair back then. I've had it since I can remember.
Can you remember what you were doing at 4? And I'll try and remember what I did in that first year.
Yeah.
No, in all honesty, that first year was absolutely awful. It was me sitting in an office on my own.
Did you take an office space?
I took an office. Well, I took a space above my husband's garage. He had a garage for all his pipe and plumbing stuff, and there was a little space above it, and so I took that off of them. I agreed with him and his partner that I would give them 10% of any deals I made, but could they not charge me rent and pay the phone bill for the first 6 months, and that's what happened.
Great.
So that went quite well.
And how did you go about business? Just picking up the phone?
Picking up the phone, old school. Picking up the phone, who do I know? Name gathering in a little book as you spoke to people, and it started.
Did you have
like
any
that.
restrictive clauses you had to?
No, I didn't. No, they didn't even actually have a contract of employment, I don't think, at that time. No, so I just got on the phone, started doing some business. There was a recession on.
Yeah.
And so majority of my competitors I know now were sitting back saying, there's no jobs out there, what can we do? And they weren't bothering to pick up the phone, or they were large competitors and the phone rang for them. And I had nothing else to do but sit on the phone and tell people what I could do for them and what they were missing out on by not using my services. And when you're on your own and you're that small, you don't have to pick up many vacancies. What you do have to do is make sure you deliver on them.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, then it was going all out to find the right candidate.
I think that's a big thing. I mean, obviously, I'm only 2 years into this journey. And I remember when we started this business, we didn't need a lot to be surviving.
No.
Like we obviously had saved some money and things, but you've got such little overheads at the beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas once you start employing staff and stuff, but when you come from a business where you've employed staff, you've had staff and you've had big offices and stuff, it's just a crazy reality when you go in it. It's so exciting, but when you look back, you're like, did I really do that?
It's exciting, but I think I found it that, once the novelty had worn off, that I'd set my own business up, I was coming into the office and I was sitting on my own, and I do a brilliant phone call, and who do you tell? You make a deal and nobody's really interested. I also realised I started wearing more casual clothes. I know now it's really trendy, everybody wears casual clothes, but I was wearing casual clothes coming into the office, and I found that actually that didn't work for me, so I started to get suited and booted because I sat up more straight, and therefore I felt more professional, and therefore I felt I could do more business. And then after a couple of months, I decided that it was getting busy. Lots of people wanted to give me work. So I took on, which sounds really ahead of its time, but it wasn't. I took on some mum home workers because I needed people to pick up more jobs and resource candidates. And I thought, well, they're sitting at home and there'll be quite a few hours when the baby's sleeping and they'll need to earn a few quid. So that's where I started.
How did that go?
Really well. Then I found
obviously
out,
recruiters already, though.
They were ex-recruiters, that had gone off to have children.
How did you go about finding them?
Asking people, saying good old recruitment, who do you know, who do you know, who do you know? And then I found out about a government scheme for mums returning to work. So I had this thing saying, right, I'm in an office with an outside toilet in the middle of nowhere. I want to offer people a great opportunity to come work for this business, but it isn't really a business at the moment. So how do you sell something they actually haven't got yet? You've got no history and actually you haven't got any money to pay them. So a bit of a problem recruiting. So I thought, well, what could I actually give somebody? And I thought, well, I can give them experience and I can help them to learn. And so I found a scheme where mums that had been out of work for some time, had been on benefits and so forth and wanted to get back into the workplace could join this mum returners to work scheme. And I only had to pay £50 and I got a full-time person.
Really?
And they were pleased because they ended up then having to learn all the skills, especially I took on a typist and secretary and so forth. And at the end of it, when we did well, they got paid handsomely for it. And it
Would you
began
get them doing the recruitment jobs?
No, so my first recruiter was YTS, what they're called now, apprentices. I'm really scared of this microphone. Apprentices. And so she came in, there was a recession on, so it wasn't really going to be worth finding the money, even if I could, to take on experienced recruiters, because they were just going to tell me there were no jobs out there. So I thought if I take on somebody who's young, keen and interested and just tell them, just keep on ringing, the jobs are there. And that's how it happened. And she went on to be a director of the company, and she went on to be with us for 20 odd years, I think, in the end. Yeah, so very successful.
That first year, can you remember what you billed?
I think my first year I billed £90,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been some feat.
It was 30 years ago, so
yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And how many people did you have at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, there was 3 of us. Yeah,
Full
3
time
of us.
or?
For one returner to work, one full-time YTS person, myself, and a couple of home workers that only got paid as they picked up jobs.
And were they in that office above the first office?
Yes, the first office, actually, we did have a situation on the birth of my second child. There was a bit of a problem because 3 of us in this tiny little office, to get out to go to the toilet, which was downstairs, you had to literally turn to your side to get through. So it was just a tiny little room. But, you know, it was my business and it was my security and it was me being the master of my success, which I found really exciting.
So how long were you in the office for?
We were in that office for, 2 years maybe. Yeah, maybe 2 years. And then we moved on to another office and we took more people on.
Yeah.
I think, you know, over the years, what we did at the end of every year, we said, right, we've made some money. How do we invest it? What should we do? Where do we want to go? And it was very much, when you're a small business like that, it's about the team, you know. And I started by saying in our organisation, the organisation chart is upside down. You work your way down our business, and that management are there to hold you up and support you. And when times are tough, to hold you up and support you, but also to push you to be the best version of who you can.
That. Never heard that
Yeah,
phrase
so,
before.
and I kept that going throughout the whole of
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Definitely, because I'd worked in an environment where the management were the big, clever ones at the top that actually suppressed a lot of talent and, you know, didn't really get in touch with the people. I believe that recruitment consultants are like hairdressers. Hate to say, it's been quite controversial. And actually, the business is only really as good as the person in the office today speaking to the client.
100%.
So if you don't look after those consultants and put them as a number one priority in the business.
Well, I had a conversation. I won't obviously name who that person was, but they were talking about exactly that and how, like, you know, we don't need to tell the people on the front line. Like, we don't need to get their opinion on what we're doing. And I was like, how long ago did you recruit? I said, and he's like, 10 years.
Yeah.
And you've got a team, 30 people on the floor every day, and you think the changes you're making, they don't need to be privy to any of that. And he wasn't even looking for he wanted to make some substantial changes to the way they worked. And he didn't even want the feedback from the people that were doing the job today. No. And I was like, unbelievable. And it's not gone great since, like, from what I've heard. So it's like, I completely agree that you've got to, the people that do that job every single day, it's like, my mum was a hairdresser and similar skill set. My mum could be the best. She says if she could go back, she'd be a recruiter now. She didn't know it existed, but I completely get it. So you're a couple of years in, and you'd had your second child in the same office?
Yes.
And then once the second child
so it must
came,
have been 2.5, there's 2.5 years between them. So.
And then, so we're in the, 92, 93 time, and then what made you move? What was that like?
Gosh, I think we were successful. You know, we loved what we were doing. We were quite passionate about it, and we were quite successful. I loved especially to employ people with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. As I said, I'm dyslexic. I didn't have any money when I set the business up. I didn't have an exam. I didn't go to business school. I wouldn't have got employed in half the recruitment businesses that were my competitors. And I feel I'm capable because I wanted to, and I do believe anybody's capable of what they set their mind to if they want to achieve something. And so the people that I took into the business were really exciting, different types of people. So I had, you know, some single mums that needed a break who went on to be brilliant consultants. I had, you know, the little rich kid that didn't want to go into daddy's business. He had something to prove for himself. Had such a mixture of people that went on to be the success, because recruitment is all about dealing with people. And people buy from people, and so having that special mix of people around DP Connect helped me to grow. And the opportunities kept on coming in.
When you moved, was it still 3? Could you fit any more?
Too many. I can't remember. I can't remember. I know that we got up to, how many people did we get up to in that first 5 years? I'd be guessing. I'd have to look at the
exact numbers.
What
was the next office?
I've got like a timeline.
Have you got one? What was the next office like?
So the next office was nicer. It was above a record shop in Bromley High Street.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it was quite
Where was
a lot
the
of
first one?
vibrations coming through. It was in Beckenham.
Beckenham, right?
Beckenham, yeah. And
So
the
that's
second one was in
Anthony
Bromley
Webster
High Street.
connection, isn't it? Beckenham
Yes,
boy?
yes. So he joined us in Bromley, yeah.
So you went out to Bromley.
So we went to Bromley, had an office in Bromley, then moved into our own bigger office further down the road, and then into another office, and right up to the end. I always had this thing that even we got to about year 10, we'd turned over in that last period. I think it was year 2000, maybe it was 2002. We turned over about 30 million, which was my peak. That was the highest we ever got to. We'd employed over 100 people, and all I kept on saying was, we were making plus millions in profit, and I kept on saying, we need our own office. We want to be a real company. I want to be a real company. And I don't know why I thought having our own office would be a real company, not just leasing. But we did end up having our own building in Bromley, and we did have a great big DP connect across the top of it. And I remember we had flags put out when we moved in, and the council said, you're not allowed to have them. But it's like, we're here, we've arrived. So the first 10 years, lots of people coming and going, different markets. I think because it's been nearly 30 years, I've broken it down into the first 10 years, the middle 10 years, and the last 10 years.
I'd say that must have been, let's focus on that just for now then. And you've had 2 children anymore?
2 children,
Do you have any more?
No.
So you've got 2 kids under the age of 10?
Yep.
Which is crazy, really, to think about. And then you're growing a business up, you're moving offices, you're hiring people, what genuinely was life like?
So I must have been 36 then, yeah. So I was 36. We'd been trading for about 10 years. I was a great piece of PR, right? Because there was a dyslexic woman in technology, which at the time didn't have a lot of people. My kids always go, oh God, Mum, is it that story again about baby under one arm, PC under the other? So there was a bit of a story there. We were lucky to be nominated for some awards. That brought in lots of recognition. That was brilliant for the business. I was chatting with somebody today, with Toby, about he's just won the Entrepreneur of the Year. And I was saying, how was it for your team when you were there? And it gave me that glow inside of me because my top team got me there. They got the business there. We did it together. And I remember going to one award where there was us and another recruitment firm were there, and they had all their advisors and their accountants. I had all my people, right down to somebody from accounts, because they had been a major part of, they hadn't got, the money in for us or paid the contractors, we never would have been surviving. So it's always about the team. Right up until that point.
But how did you manage being a mother as well? Because that must have been so difficult.
Yeah, one, you don't know anything else. I've only ever, been a mother and a woman, so it's difficult. I think it's challenging sometimes. There's a bit of a guilt factor. I've got a problem in my life that if I do something, I'm doing it. So I did have occasions where I think my ex-husband wasn't very happy. I wouldn't turn up on time, or I've been caught in a meeting. And then the pans of guilt on the drive home that you're running late. And I think that's really quite difficult to go with. And I think also a lot of women that I've spoken to, we all try and be this perfect working mum. It doesn't exist. I am not superwoman, and I got lots of things wrong. But I do know, for me, I remember a woman in a Chinese one saying, these women that work, it's not fair on the kids, and having this big guilt pang. But I know to have stayed at home and not fulfilled my own personal ambitions would have been wrong for my children as well, because they would have had a moany stay-at-home mum. Instead, they had somebody that, was happy for majority of my life so far.
Did you find you had to dedicate the weekends and
it was about quality time, and I love a holiday, so once we could afford it and once the business was successful, I did like taking lots of holidays, so that was good, and it's having that quality of time, and I was lucky to have people help me around the house. And the early years when it was not very much money, working very hard, my parents and my sister, lost my sister unfortunately, but my sister, she was heaven sent to help me look after my children.
Oh, that's amazing. So we'll stop the first 10 and let's move into the second 10.
Well, the first 10, I've missed the end of the first 10. So first, because that's what sets up the second 10.
Well.
So in the first 10 years, by the end of it, we were pretty well known in the market. We were doing some great stuff, some innovative new stuff. We were being recognised for awards everywhere.
Did you have quite a loud team? I imagine you had quite a powerful team.
Yeah, we had a few.
You were out in Bromley, so you had to fight with the London.
We're in Bromley. We're also in London as well.
You had an office in London as well.
Yeah, I can't remember what years that was, but yeah. So we had a really brilliant team, and we couldn't seem to do anything wrong, and the money was pouring in. We had brilliant clients. We were winning awards. I was interviewed on Sky News.
Really?
I was involved in the Veuve Clicquot program, and I loved it. But unfortunately, what happened was I started to believe my own press and got a little bit above my stations, I think. And I was so much, invited to Downing Street to meet Tony Blair, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, and in the newspapers and getting a little bit carried away. That took my eye off the ball of the business.
So it's talking about the millennium now.
Yeah. So it was really, a busy time. And I think what I didn't see happening, because I was looking too much externally and getting our PR and our branding and who we were out there, and getting a bit too self-important, I think. I missed things in my business, I missed things in the market, and within 4 years there became a recession in the technology industry around 2002, 2003, and we went from that turnover of 30 million down to a turnover of 12 within 3 years. And that's when you learn about how to run a business. That downward spiral when you have the London Stock Exchange ringing up saying they might want to get rid of 50 of your contractors tomorrow. All of a sudden life's a different ball game. So we had a real drastic decline in our business over the next 3 to 4 years.
So and you say, just to go into that, so you're talking about you believe in your own hype and all that. That was very, I love that, because it's an honest response to you. But how does that and the recession, how is that connected?
Well, the connection was all these things coming together at one point. So with the recession, could I have seen that the market was going? Could I have listened more to some of my people telling me there were no jobs out there?
Right.
However, a lot of recruitment consultants say that all the time.
They love to say that.
But there was stuff happening, and I invested in a whole new big permanent team and didn't realise that the permanent numbers of requirements weren't coming in. Wasn't looking at the data. Too busy out there on the Toni Cocozza roadshow and not caring enough about the things that matter, which is the client and the candidates, and obviously number one, my people. So nothing drastic as such, but just a little bit of loving it,
but that makes
without
sense.
really keeping your eye on the ball. Remembering a business is only as good as today's success. We always say a consultant is only as good as today's number. A business is only good as today's success. So at that point, the business really changed, and all of a sudden it was all hands, all eyes, and everything back on inside the business. And that's where I learnt a lot about data, looking at messages, finances. Luckily, I'd always run the business very old school. I used to do the accounts for the first 3 years, and it was literally, right, if we've made this much money, that'll give us 6 months more to live, plus a bit in the bank for the tax man and a bit here for that. And so I was very frugal around the money, and I got the business, actually over the whole 27 years, always it was a brilliant cash position, always had a lot of money, always reinvested the money back into the business. And that's something I think I got very right, which helped when we were having the downward spiral, because at that point I made choices that if I'd had outside investors or backers or anything, they might not allow to. I was lucky at year 2000, we'd never had an overdraft, we'd never had any funding, we'd never factored. Every penny that I made for the business went back into the business. Most of that was because I didn't really know you could go and borrow other people's money, quite innocent to the fact. But I'm pleased that was a good position to be in, because, I made the decisions that were good for my people.
So whilst this is, can you remember the moment you realised it was dropping? So when you woke up from the Toni Cocozza roadshow, as you called it.
I think I noticed, because every month the contract numbers were dropping. We were having clients saying we're letting people go. There were less jobs being, it was another recession starting to happen. We'd had that 2000 boom of the the millennium. Then we had the dot-com boom. Then we had the fallout of that. So there was a real technology recession, 2002, 2003. A lot of the things I remember at the time, because I didn't really know what the rest of the market was doing, I remember thinking, it's me, I've done this wrong, or what have I done wrong? And actually, when I left DP, I got this chart that showed you the recruitment market over the years. And actually, that's my story. But there's a lot of things I could have done if I'd known that now. If I was doing it again, I'd do differently. So those first we went down, and then we came back up.
So what changes did you make? That 2003, things are going, now, you're now back. Yeah. I imagine you've stopped going to Downing Street.
Yeah.
You pulled yourself into roll the sleeves up again. What changes did you make?
I think the biggest thing was I asked for help, so I brought in some non-exec directors at that point who helped me. I started saying, I don't know what I'm doing, can somebody help me? And that was quite important. We really learnt about looking after our people. I think, I everything I believed was so important, and I never stopped believing it. I just got distracted, meant that I missed and lost some good people that were fundamental to the business. So it was a rebuild of that. I learned about controls, as I said, finance, clients, marketing, forward thinking, strategy, the whole works. I learned over that next 3 to 4 years. And the business turned around again, and we went up again, and contract numbers went up. We brought in some new people, we went into some new markets, and we were doing really, really well. And we started to really peak again, and we were going for it till about 2007, 2008.
And then the second recession.
Yeah, second recession. The worst thing about that recession was just before that recession, I went through a real personal crisis. Myself, my marriage unfortunately broke down. So one of the biggest lessons I've had is, when you're putting everything into your business, and yes, it's been successful, and yes, you're getting financial rewards, recognition, whatever it is, just turn around and just think how lonely that can be, having all that just by yourself to go home to. And unfortunately, my marriage paid the price for all of that. And then I got into a situation where that was happening, the recession started happening, and personally, I had some issues in how I coped with that.
Yeah, I imagine.
My coping mechanisms were not good. I started to self-medicate to make myself that happy leader, and I ended up in a rehab.
Really? What year was that?
That was in 2008.
Well,
So what was happening really was that my drinking went out of control. That was my way of going home. And
how old are your kids then? About 18 as well?
So 15 and 17, so a bad time. So I'm trying to hold that together. At one point, I was sort of living in a hotel.
Couldn't throw more at you, I don't think.
No, it was a really, really tough time. And I think the problem was that I didn't really say to anybody, I'm not coping. No. I tried to hold it all together. So you're going into work, you're standing up in front of your team, and you're saying, it's all going to be fine. But inside, you're dying. And who do you tell and who do you talk to? No. So unfortunately, I threw myself into a bottle. But thanks to God, I got out.
I've seen it before, and I've seen it from other people. And I think it's amazing that you're prepared to be open about it.
Yeah.
What did you keep in touch with your ex-husband?
Yes.
Did you keep a relationship based on
at the time it wasn't that great.
No.
So what happened was I ended up sort of having some issues myself, going in and getting myself sorted, realising that maybe drinking for the next year might not be the best option if I wanted to get through a nasty divorce that was happening, and I went through a bit of a nasty divorce.
Did he maintain did you say he was a mechanic or a plumber? Or?
He had a plumbing business.
Did he maintain that while you did what you did?
Yes.
I bet that was difficult though. If your earnings, I know you're a joint income or whatever, you're a partnership, but if one of you've probably started off both quite humble and then you've gone bang.
Yeah.
I imagine his plumbing business didn't turn over 30 million.
I think it's difficult. It was
as a man
difficult.
as well.
Yeah.
That kind of I'm a provider potentially.
Yeah.
That must have been a big challenge. And I think a lot of recruitment businesses, it's about and owners of successful businesses will have that. I mean, I'm getting married in June.
Oh, don't be put off. I had 28 brilliant years.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I'm really excited. I'll be honest, I wasn't really excited. In the last few months, and we've had some. I'm being really honest there. But we've had some issues because
we might have to edit this tape. What are we all talking
about?
No.
But we've had some we've had two. I've got two businesses. So I started another one in January, which is only 18 months into my first one, and then I'm getting married and I'm renovating a house at the same time. And it's the same thing.
Stress.
And she started her own personal training business, which is actually what she really wants to do. And I've supported her with that. But it's meant no income, no support, and mad hours, like 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night. And we sat down together about a month ago, we haven't spent any time. And actually, we're getting married in 2 months, but our lives are going that way.
Yeah.
I'm spending, because you're working late, I'm actually now staying till 10 at night here to get stuff done. And we had to refocus and go, what do we want here? Do we actually want this? Do we even want to get married? And we agreed we do. And we're making the relevant changes.
I think that's why when I go into businesses now, the first thing I say to the CEO is, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
It is for them.
How does this affect your life? You know, because we all think we've got to go in and we've got to be successful and we've got to do this. There are so many people that struggle once they get successful with how they cope with that and how their whole families come together. And so it's about that balance. So my new business is Empower Executive and Business Coaching, and it's peak performance with balance, because it's about not losing yourself as you're, you know, building brilliant organisations. But, you know, with I went through the divorce. It was a nasty court case. It was quite expensive, as you can imagine. And it was a terrible time. But what I did was I found my true authentic self over that period. And I questioned myself and what I was doing, why I was doing it. And I think that my leadership and my life has turned around from that point. I haven't had a drink for 11 years.
Wow.
I think that might have something to do with why life got a bit better, but you know, that's my issues. And I still work a program around that to make sure that I keep mentally sane.
It is crazy though. Like I stopped drinking, not completely, but I had a 2016 when I was thinking about starting a business. I was mad into all sorts of podcasts, and I found this guy who did this 30-day no alcohol challenge on Instagram, and he talked about his life since and before. So I did it I didn't pay him, I just did it myself, and I smashed it. It was like middle of the summer, football on the European Championships. Everyone's like, you cannot do 30 days without drinking right now. I was like, well, I can. So I did 32 days actually, I remember it. And that changed my relationship with alcohol, because then I could just pick it up and drop it whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I had last year I did 9 months where I didn't drink. So I'd do a month on, I'd do 2 off, and I just played around with it. But again, the last 3 months when I was going through this shit, I was drinking nearly 4 nights a week. I was working here till 8, I was going for 2-3 beers. And my business partner is the one who pulled me up, and I went, what are you doing? Like, you never say let's go for a beer. Like, you don't do that in the week. But you do, it gets so easy.
It's the coping mechanism, isn't it? It's how do we cope when life is very stressful? And when we're employing a lot of people in a market that actually asks people to give a hell of a lot. Yeah, they get a lot back, but to give a hell of a lot. And I think it's about looking after the well-being. Sounds a bit cliche, but looking after the well-being of our people. You know, who are they talking to? So if you're a young guy and you're working in recruitment at the moment and you haven't hit your target, but you've got your mortgage or you're getting married and your boss is on your neck and you're not sure if you can do it anymore, who do you talk to? You can't go and tell your boss you're not sure you want to be in recruitment or that you might never make another placement. You can't go and tell your poor future wife that's waiting to hear. So who do you speak to? And that's why some of the work I'm doing is going into businesses and working with their key people on the whole person. Because if you can look after the whole person, you'll get a better performer. But you have to remember, they're not just money-making machines, consultants. They're actually, you know, the keystone to our success.
100%. Right, so that leads us nicely.
So I had all that horrible situation.
So you got through the divorce. Got
over my own issues.
Yeah, so then you didn't drink again. And then how did life go beyond then?
Great. I mean, from that point onwards... I sound like a sad story, but from that point onwards, you know, I got my life back together, got the business back together. We had some great people, but over the years, you know, another mistake that I made is that when this is all happening with me, sometimes you forget those other people again, because, you know, I had stuff going on, and so I lost some good people along the way. Right. Had other situations where I had different groups of team leaders. And they didn't get on too well, and I knew something was going to happen, but I had my own stuff going on and I didn't move quick enough and I lost all of them. Really? You know, so lots of things about that, keeping the eye on the people. And when it's you need other people to bounce off of. So, you know, I went on to get non-execs and other people that would help me and talk through it.
One thing I am grateful of is having business partners, because although I'll never reap the full reward on my own, I don't want to. I've enjoyed having that shared success, but shared failure and shared. So was that really difficult at times? Then,
it was. And just not having somebody to ring. You know, when you get terrified because you think you're about to lose all your contractors, or you think your best consultant's going to walk out the door and you're not sure where the market's going, who do you ring at 10 o'clock at night and say, help, I want to talk honestly and openly to you? And, you know, some of the clients that I'm working with at the moment, I'm so honoured when I get a phone call saying, Toni, can I just run something past you? And it's like, yes, because that art of sharing, you know, everybody knows deep down within themselves the answers, but maybe it's just being questioned to get those answers out of them. So I had all that stuff going on. And we built the company. We're back up again. It was looking really good. And unfortunately, my sister was diagnosed with lung cancer and subsequently died over a very short period. So that rocked my world a little bit. That was in 2011. So in that period from 2008 till 2011, it was a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
And it did make me think, what do I want to do with my life? You know, what is this all about? And I had the privilege of taking on her youngest daughter to come and live with me. So I had to embed this new daughter. So I've got 3 daughters now. And that was a tough time for me and the family. And the people at work that supported me were amazing. But at that point, I realised I needed help. And somebody that was doing some non-exec work with me, I rang and said, I've had a phone call, I'm going to the hospital, I believe I'm going to lose my sister. And he said, would you like me to go in and run your business for you? I said, yes, please. And I literally, you know, it's most probably the first time in all those years where I let somebody take control of it. And I had the 6 or 8 weeks that I needed to get my family back as best as we could, and came back into my business and realised fresh blood had made a bit of a difference, you know, because we've been going a long time by then. And I realised at that point that the business needed fresh blood to move on. And so that's when I got it into my head that as well I wasn't getting any younger, and that really I needed a change, I needed something different. I wasn't motivated by the money or the success or anything like that anymore. You know, I'd realised the true heart of recruitment was about, we do a brilliant job, whether we're successful, known in the media or not, we find people work changes people's lives. And I think we underestimate sometimes what a great profession this is and what a great job we do for people.
Completely on the page with that. And that was the thing, I don't know if you saw, I put a post out 2 days ago, and then I did another one yesterday on LinkedIn about, my view is that recruiters are gonna need to produce more and more content, right? And what I'm not trying to say is that recruiters should change what they do, but the reason I'm mentioning it now is the comments then underneath from some people who are recruiters and then sometimes suppliers, just absolutely just ripping the recruitment industry to pieces about, you know, most of them can't string a sentence together, and most of them couldn't write a status if they tried, and, you know, they should stick to getting on the phone. And I'm like, do you know what? Like, most of you are in the industry. Yeah. You're all convinced your competitors are all shit and you're amazing, you're the only good person. It's bollocks. Like, I spend all day going out meeting recruiters thinking, you're entrepreneurial, you're inspiring. Yeah. Of course there's crap in the industry. There's crap in every industry.
Yeah, it's too right.
You don't go to get a lawyer that's going to help you with a house move or whatever and find the shit one. You go and look for the good one. And I just got burnt by a builder 2 weeks ago, and I paid him 2 weeks before he was due to finish. Never seen the guy again. 10 grand. My parents had to come down and finish it. That was going on while I was going through the shit as well. And I'll never use him again. It doesn't mean I'm never using a builder again. Like, no, that's right. There's some cracking people and this industry does change lives. And you can meet people and you can tell the ones that are proud of it, and you can tell the ones that are ashamed of it. They're not going to last anyway. Yeah.
I think we do an amazing job. I think there's some brilliant people in our industry. I think it's a great industry for people to be successful. I think we do have a slight problem that we get people to a certain level when they are successful, and then we don't give them enough help, training, self-development at that level to get them onto the next stage, you know. So there's a lovely saying that says, what got me here won't get me there. And I think that happens throughout your career. Whatever skills you've got that gets you there, don't automatically think that your people are then going to be capable of going as far as you're capable of going with the business.
No, 100%.
So at that point I decided that, you know, let's have an exit.
2011
This was about 2011, 2012.
But you had another 5 years then.
Yeah, because what I did was I realised that I needed to at some point say the word about going, selling, exiting, changing or whatever. And so I brought somebody into the business to help me get the business ready for sale. So I could understand what was actually necessary and what was needed. And we went on a journey where we were going to sell the business together. And, you know, I always had this thing that I would stay with the business and I would go and I always wanted to be Marjorie Scardino and be on a FTSE 100 company. Didn't quite happen. I wanted to challenge, you know, the old thing that you had to be a business graduate to get anywhere, you know. But that wasn't my journey. And I took somebody in, we decided to go for selling it, and then a little while into it, he approached me and said, actually, I don't want to go, I want to stay on. I think it's a brilliant business and I would like to buy it from you. So yeah, it took a long time because it took about 2.5 years from talking about it. And what was important for me was watching that person within the business, watching how they got on with everybody. I was quite paranoid about not everybody losing their jobs because I personally was going to win by moving away. So it was important to me that the person came from within the business. A lot of people said, you would have made much more money if you had sold to an external person. But also that's taking your eye off the ball again. This way, the person was in my business. They were doing a good job. We had some great people, and that seemed the best option for me. Yeah. But he didn't move as quickly as he was meant to, so it went on a few more years. And in the end, I had to keep saying, are you doing this deal or you're not doing this deal? But we did finally do the deal. And that's got to be one of the most heartfelt moments, standing up in front of, especially one of the ladies who was number one employee. She was my credit control manager, and she'd worked for me for many, many years, and saying, I've decided to leave the business.
How long did you tell them? How long did you give it?
We told them that night, and I left the next day. So
why is that always the way in recruitment? Why don't we never give any grace to it?
I think it is because it's change, and when change happens, it's uncomfortable and it brings up a lot of things. So it is better
for the atmosphere to clear it out.
Also, you sign until the deal's done. The deal's not done. So there was a few months before the deal went through where it was so painful because.
Were you getting on with your?
Yeah, we were getting on. Yeah, we got on absolutely fine. But we had this. We'd signed the agreement to say that no decisions could now be made without both of us agreeing to them because it was at such a fundamental point. And somebody came to me and said, I don't know what's happened in this business, Toni, but you can't get anything done anymore. You used to do everything. Now nobody will make a decision. Everybody's waiting for somebody else. And you couldn't tell them, well, actually, that's true. But that was very frustrating.
How many people were in the leadership layer at that point?
There were about 5. Right. Yeah, but only 3 people knew about it. Yeah. So it was, quite tight-knit.
When you do an MBA, I mean, I don't know an awful lot about, if I'm honest, about the process around that, and you hear the term a lot. But is that when obviously there's
so the management inside?
But they'll have to go and borrow that.
He goes and borrows money, puts up some money of his own money, and
so that'll create a time for a process anyway. Won't it? Because he'll have to go and find the relevant investment himself. And,
I think it took. It took a lot longer than we both expected. And the deal that we agreed and shook hands on, it never ends up being that deal as well. Luckily for me, but unluckily for him, halfway through the process, I met a man, and he was working high up, and he was buying and selling companies around the world. So he had a lot of knowledge, but that helped in a way. I say it as a joke, but it helped in a way because when I would get totally Italianly emotional, screaming, saying, they're trying to stitch me up, I'm not doing it, they've changed the terms, he would calm me down and say, that's the bank. The bank has put that in, and right to his word. When I sold the business to Aidan, he kept to his word on all of it, and has been a real decent man to sell it to. So it worked well. I mean, the business changed a lot since.
What was that like, then, walking out?
Okay, the walking out bit. So on that day, it was very difficult to see people's faces, and my little credit control manager, bless her heart, started crying, which made me start crying. And then I thought, oh my God, what have I done to everybody? But then, that sense of freedom, I didn't have a sense of freedom. I went around for a couple of weeks telling people since I'd lost my job, and everybody was saying, you haven't lost your job, you've sold your business very successfully. But I didn't realise what a sense of identity it was. And once the dust had sort of settled, I felt really quite lost. I wasn't really sure who I was. I then really wished I wasn't dating somebody who was doing so bloody well at work, because all of a sudden, from being, the big I am in the business world, I was just the blob at home. So it was a little bit of...
fill your time with?
Well, I did a bit of travelling, and did all those nice things, and the golf lessons and art classes and all that sort of stuff. But it meant that you were
financially stable for life now, which is that has still got to be a good feeling deep down.
You'd think so, right?
You'd hope so.
But when you take a lot of money out of your business and you're earning a lot of money and you have good time, and there's always next month's salary, you overspend, right? And I overspend. When you've got a lump sum that's sitting there, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't know what inflation's going to do. I don't know what my kids are going to need. And I'm terrified. And it's really amazing how you can still be so financially insecure with a big lump sitting in the bank. And then, of course, it hasn't been the best time to get any interest. I haven't earned any money on my money that's sitting there, but I'm not touching it, So, it's been interesting. I've really been shocked at the aftermath, and I think that's something for all your listeners.
Yeah,
if you sell that business, I didn't realise that maybe some of my lunches got through work or my taxi, or all the stuff I had to start paying for myself, like my booper. My God. So look at the money, definitely. But even though that was fine for me, it was the shock of it. It was more afterwards, who am I now? And I realised I was Toni Cocozza, DP Connect, and all of a sudden I was Toni Cocozza, and I wasn't really sure who she was or what she could do. When I started to think I've got to do some sort of work, I literally went, but I haven't got any GCSEs, O-levels. What can I do? What are my skills? I don't know. I've never written a CV in my life. Who am I?
You weren't seriously going to go get a job, were you?
Well, yeah, any sort of job.
Just go to a recruitment company.
I started to get a few charity jobs. So I've been doing a few things to help out. I thought one thing I can do at the moment is we'd always given well to charity. I can actually give time. So I've been giving time to a suicide charity. Which
you told me on the phone.
Discussed about. It's one of my heartfelt things. So I was just like, if I wanted to work, I think I needed to know that I could work if I wanted to. I went back to school, even though I hadn't got much of that, and I did the executive coaching, I've got a diploma.
Really?
Got a diploma, 2 diplomas.
So what made you, or did when you thought, right, I'm going to start a new business and it's going to be a small executive coaching, how did you come to that conclusion?
I think my friends had sort of said to me I'm quite empowering for women in business. I've obviously had some tough life experiences, and I've learnt the art of sharing and talking confidentially and openly to people, as we just did, but I forgot you had listeners. So there you go.
This is why people love this podcast, because we talk about real stuff.
So I thought at that time, well, that's something that everybody said I was quite empathetic, and that maybe I could do something with that. So I started to do some, what they call it now, business advisory, coaching, whatever, dealing with businesses. And I did that just with people that rang up and said any advice, and I've sort of helped them, and I've seen that I can add good value to places, so I'm working more and more in that at the moment.
So now you've got a business that's generating revenue again, just for personal use, and you're living, how do you live your life now? How many days a week do you work?
So I moved with my man to Henley-on-Thames, which is lovely, on the river. We've got a boat, very nice. So
is
we
that
have
towards
days.
Reading, Henley?
Yes,
or past Reading?
yes.
Is it past Reading?
Before Reading, I think,
I had an ex from Reading.
Did you?
Yeah, I've not got the best stories of Reading. Last time I went there,
Henley's slightly different
I
than
turned
Reading,
up on a train
though.
to drop a bag off, and she basically told me to F off and drove off, and then I got back on the train. I never went to Reading again.
No,
I did go. I went to a recruitment company, but they didn't work with them.
So I live in Reading, and I've also got an apartment in Blackfriars.
Oh, lovely.
So I work, when I'm in London working.
And he's still working
He works in cybersecurity.
Right.
So good business. So I work most probably about 5 or 6 days a month.
Sounds great.
I'm really been pleased to be involved with the recruitment network. I think they are fantastic what they're doing there. I think I would have made so much more money if I'd been involved with them.
Well, that was one thing I was going to ask. Like, did anything like that exist back then?
No, I mean, I got involved with APSCO and the REC and places like that because I felt I wanted to learn off people, and they at the beginning were very much good networking types of places for me, so I got some for there. But the recruitment network for me goes that little bit further. I mean, it really helps to introduce you to different people doing it, and I love their huddles, and the last one with the blind guy.
Oh yeah,
my
amazing.
New hero,
yeah,
blind guy, fantastic.
Well, that is, I actually think though there's a gap in the, I know they're doing it with the Trailblazers, but that owner, that manager level piece, because when I was at Vanquis, we were on a training course, and do you know Nikki Coffin? Have you heard of Nikki? No. She's one of the coaches in the industry. She's amazing. Hopefully you're listening. If you're not, oh well. But I remember thinking, the course was great, but we went every day, once a month for a year. I was part of the sort of leadership fast track team. And the best bit was meeting people from other agencies. Yeah. Like, in between the bits of work, I just loved hearing other people's stories and going, yes, I'm not the only one who thinks that. And actually, I'd been the top biller in our business, and my team was billing the most, and I was in this weird space because there was the owners, and then there was Claire, who brought me in, and then she'd gone on maternity, and she was unbelievable, but wasn't around. And then I had a load of other guys that they were leading teams, but they weren't, and I didn't feel like they were at my level at the time without being big-headed, but I just felt I was in this weird little vacuum. I wasn't the biller anymore. I didn't know my own identity, and then being around these people was just great because you met so many like-minded.
Just learn so much, don't you?
I'd love that. I think that if they can tap into that level as part of the recruitment
I think they're
network,
starting to actually, aren't they? They've got
a bigger market
a Rumble or a Bumble or something.
Well, there's a bigger market there to play with as well.
Another thing that I'm doing with a really exciting business, Park Avenue and Richard and Ella, I'm going into their business for a couple of days a month, but one of the days I'm spending with their people, with their key people in the business, sitting down, and they're giving them one-to-one time to talk about, life, but mainly, it's all around business. It's around where do you want to get to in 3 months? How are you going to get there? Have you got a plan? But there's something special in having an outside independent person do that with you. And it's a confidential space. And I think they're, very good to do that and invest in that. And that's something that I think more and more really good recruitment consultancies are doing. When you can ask me what year, don't know what year. One year we had a guy called Jim Hesketh who used to come into the business, and I did the same for my senior people, and he was fantastic. Some people would sit there and they would talk about, my business development plan or my strategy to achieve this success, and other people would sit there and say, my wife's going to leave me if I carry on working here, help me through it. And it's all about getting them to their peak as an individual so that they can then give that performance back to the industry. And so I think there are some very good companies at the moment really tuning into that level of people and real care.
So if any of my audience or people listening to this would like to inquire about you coming in and talking to their business and helping them, have you got capacity to help more businesses?
Yes, a little.
You don't want to do too many days?
Don't want to do more than 5.
No?
I could do 6 days a month, or maybe 7.
Right,
I have, yeah.
So, and the profile would be either to help the owners and leaders themselves, or even you're prepared to go in and talk to their consultant level.
Some of the remits are, I've got a brilliant business, I would like to sell it. How do I go about it? So not, they're not ready to sell it, but they want to get ready to sell it. Other people I'm dealing with, it's about we're a young, new, exciting business, but we've never done this before. What should we, a lot of my time is spent saying, don't do that. We tried this, we tried that. Have you thought about this? Tried this, tried that. This happened. And it's to encourage strategic thinking, really. I see myself as a strategic, if I could say it, thinking partner, helping people just to think around those decisions. And also to, sometimes we can't see it ourselves, but to say, how is your consultants feeling about that? What's the feedback? As you said, too many good people leave businesses that they don't need to because they don't talk enough about what the issues are.
Wow. Well, look, if anyone does want to find out about whether you can help, would it be just LinkedIn best place to get you?
LinkedIn. Yep.
Yeah. So Toni Cocozza, obviously, we'll tag you in all the posts. And you're happy for people just to reach out, even if it's just to ask you some questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think most people who've been on the podcast so far have had some interaction afterwards with people who've listened. Well, that pretty much wraps up where we are.
Good.
I want to say thanks so much. That was genuinely one of my favourite episodes. I loved it. And I hope the audience have had value. I know I personally have. I wish you every success. I think what you've done is amazing, and I keep flying the flag for not only women but just leaders in the recruitment industry.
And you too. I said at the LinkedIn meeting last week, you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Stood on that stage, or sat on that stage.
Talked about this.
And you marketed yourself. Where we all sit there pretending, yes, hopefully you'll just come to us. But actually you said, did your sales pitch. Good on you. That's real
why
true
not? I'm
salesman.
passionate about this podcast and just what we're trying to do in general.
You should
and I hope more people. So that leads me into finishing up and saying, look, guys, anyone who's listening to this who's enjoyed the episode, do us a favour. Firstly, if you're on the iTunes store, give us a 5-star rating or give us your comments, because it allows Apple basically will publish it to more people. But also, if you've listened and you want to share any comments or thoughts or feedback on LinkedIn, tag myself, tag Toni. The more people that share it, the more people will listen to it, and the whole aim is to give those people either that are in the trenches of growth right now or potentially looking to start their agency next year after, give them that inspiration that they can do it and that they're going to be successful. So we are back next Thursday with another episode with another leader of the industry, and we will see you all soon.